My daughter and grandson are dead. Forget it. I will never forgive you. My mother was a very cold person. When I was young, I didn't like my mother. My husband was terribly upset when he heard my mother's words on the phone. Maybe you're not lying. I don't mind, because if you are, you'll be in trouble, right? In a sinister voice, the devil whispered to her son. I could easily imagine her grinning just from hearing her voice. Good. Shall we go then? I think you're the one who's really in trouble. My mother hung up the phone after saying that. My name is Lily, and I am a 33-year-old office worker. I met my husband Keiko through my grandmother, who attends a tea ceremony class. I don't like this grandmother. He is the grandson of someone I met at the tea ceremony class, but he's also a kind and good person. Lily, please meet me just once so you can meet this man. I was taken quite forcibly to meet him. I never thought that I would go on an arranged marriage meeting, but at that time I was close to 30 years old, and I knew that one day I would get married. In the end, I gave in to my grandmother's push, but when I actually met this man, I was happy to learn that both he and his parents had good personalities. After dating for about a year, I married Keiko, whom I'm still married to. My husband's family runs a company, and as his parents' only son, my husband will be their next president. My family is extremely ordinary, so when my friends and colleagues found out about my marriage, they envied me, calling me spoiled. See, I was right that you two would get along. My grandmother was proud of our union. Keiko's family included his father, my father-in-law, his mother, my mother-in-law, along with his grandmother, my grandmother-in-law. Keiko's grandmother did not live with them. My husband's brother got ill and passed away several years ago, and now the company is run by my husband's father. My husband lived at home until he married me. Perhaps because of that, he didn't do any of the household chores properly. For example, the clothes he took off, he'd just leave there, and even after he finished eating, he didn't put away the dish he used. If I warned him, he would do it, but only reluctantly. It's been several months since I got married, and no matter how many times I say it, it doesn't seem to get better. Hey, why don't you keep your socks on? Oh, you've been making a lot of noise caring for our house. Mother did it silently, he said jokingly. Huh? What did you just say, mother? Did you say mother? I was flabbergasted by this. I'm not your mother. I packed my things and went home. My family looked surprised at my sudden return, but I lied and said that I was lonely because my husband was on his business trip. When my grandmother asked me about my married life, I said, well, it's okay. I had no choice but to answer. Do not cause any trouble, my grandmother and father reminded me. Seeing my wry smile on my face, only my mother, Lily, are you really doing well over there? I heard her. It's normal, and it's not something your mother should worry about. Yes, it would be nice if that were the case. It's been this way with my mom since I was little. Conversation does not last, and just talking makes me very nervous. My mother has always been a scary person to me. My father was always busy with work and wasn't home much, and my grandfather passed away when I was in elementary school. From my point of view, as a child, my parents' house revolved around my grandmother. When I was young and asked my mother about something, the words that came back to me were, "Ask Grandma." As a child, I came to think that my mother was not interested in me, and after that I stopped consulting my parents about things. However, my grandmother was somewhat intrusive. If Lily does what Grandma says, she will definitely be happy, she said, as if it were a habit. As soon as I graduated from university, I ran away from home. To be honest, I didn't really understand what a family was like. However, I knew that everyone in my husband's family seemed to be on good terms and always ate together. No matter how hungry I am, I have to wait until everyone is ready to begin eating, I've heard my husband say. It didn't seem to change even after he got married and left his parents' home. About 3 days later after, I returned home. Lily? My demon-looking grandmother called me while I was resting in my room. Surprisingly, my husband Keiko and mother-in-law were there too. I came to pick you up. It's my fault. Let's go home together. Seated there was a husband who seemed self-reflective. Lily, I heard about it from Keiko. It seems I spoiled him too much. Keiko seems to be self-reflecting. Could you please come back? I was completely deceived by their apologetic appearance. I heard the reason for the quarrel, but Lily, you are also to blame. As my grandmother said that with a sigh, she glanced sideways at my mother, when my mother whispered that she was sorry. Lily, Keiko and your mother-in-law came back to pick me up like this, so try your best, she said. I thought that only my mother would be protected, but it seems that it is useless to expect. What about the past? It's Rawa now, a new imperial era in Japan elevating order and harmony. We should be getting along. Should we break up like this? But I understand, I replied with one word and left my home. I was silent in the car on the way home when my mother-in-law said to me, Lily, if the housework is so hard, then why don't we eat together? I will cook for you and Keiko. Of course, there was no reason to be happy about my mother-in-law's proposal. No, not really. I want Keiko to help me with the house more. If I do that more, then, as if interrupting my words, why? Why does Keiko do housework? Housework is the wife's job, isn't it? My mother-in-law looked at me with a questioning face. But I'm working too. You know, Lily, we're not a normal family. Keiko will take over the company one day, and it's your job. You want me to quit right now, you know? It's not a big deal. It's not my job. I've been working at my current company since I graduated from university. I like challenging work, but I also like kind colleagues. Even when I'm silent, my mother-in-law doesn't stop talking. I'm pregnant, I told my mother-in-law, even though I was told to keep it a secret. In fact, the week before this incident, the pregnancy test came out positive. My husband was happy with this. I knew that when I was pregnant, I wouldn't be able to move like I used to. Since my husband was going to be a father, I wanted him to at least be a little bit more cooperative with housework. That's all there is to it. I hadn't been examined at a maternity hospital yet, and I was irritated. However, things took an unexpected turn. My mother-in-law was complaining to me until recently. Huh? Pregnant, Lily? Are you pregnant? She became gentle, as if the palm had been turned back. Huh? Suddenly what? Does this person have a split personality or something? After that, when I parted from my mother-in-law and returned to my home, the room was surprisingly clean. Huh? Did you clean it up? I wish you had kept the pregnancy a secret, I said to my husband. My mother has been bothering me for a long time. I didn't tell you, but she was annoyed that I was going to have a baby soon. I'm sorry. He sincerely thanked me. Looking at my husband like that, I thought that I would try a little harder. But it's not because my mother said it. But eating at my parents' house isn't a bad thing, is it? At least on weekends, let's be spoiled. I couldn't find any reason to refuse when he said that in a gentle tone, probably because he cared about me and my body. I should have refused at this point, but the hellish pregnancy life starts here. When I went to the maternity hospital the next week, yes, you are pregnant. I was happy with what the doctor said. I vowed to give a lot of love to my unborn child. Eating at my mother-in-law's house wasn't as bad as I had imagined. My father-in-law and grandmother-in-law were also very happy about my pregnancy, more than anything. Come on, Lily, eat. You're pregnant with our precious heir. My mother-in-law felt a little old, but it was much better than her feeling sarcastic. I wondered what would happen, but thought to myself, I can do this. The thought soon fell apart. It happened at a dinner with my in-laws the following week. On this day, I was at my limit. I made a request to my mother-in-law despite feeling ashamed. I'm sorry, mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's face, which until then had been smiling, suddenly turned grim. Why? Well, I started getting morning sickness a few days ago. I feel like I'm not eating well, and I feel sick if I don't put something in my mouth. My mother-in-law has, of course, experienced childbirth herself. I thought she would understand, but I got an unexpected reply from my mother-in-law. Huh? Morning sickness? Didn't you hear from Keiko? We have a rule that we eat only after all of us are together. Until then, please be patient. A moment later, in a voice too soft for me to hear, totally nasty, she said jokingly. This made me sad and tears welled up in my eyes. After all, my father-in-law came home late that day. And it was after 8 p.m. when I was able to eat dinner. Of course, I couldn't wait until then, so while my mother-in-law was away, I ate little by little from my plate to hide. I felt sad seeing myself like this. By the time I finally got home that night, it was past 10 p.m., as if to add to my tiredness. Lily, at my parents' house today, no matter how hungry I was embarrassed to be so greedy, he said. Huh? Didn't I tell you? I think I'm starting to get more morning sickness. I feel sick if I don't eat something. I will explain. But in the end, well, I'm a man, so I don't understand even if you say that. Be careful next time, he said. I was overwhelmed with anger at this, and I was dumbfounded and unable to say anything. After that, I stopped going to my in-laws' house. I lied that I was not feeling well. In fact, morning sickness was painful and heavy, and I wished every day that it would end soon. At the same time, I felt love for my child, who was growing up safely. My father-in-law and grandmother-in-law kindly told me not to push myself too hard. But those two were different. Hello, Lily. Are you planning on not coming over this weekend too? Keiko is the only one who always comes over here. Don't you think that's rude? The constant contact from my mother-in-law gave me a headache. If I don't pick up, the phone kept ringing until I picked it up. Excuse me, mother-in-law. Apparently I have severe morning sickness. Huh? Again? I didn't have morning sickness. Does that mean you're feeling good? She said jokingly. Yes, even though I looked sick on the street, they didn't sympathize with me. Are you serious? That's a funny thing to say. Don't you understand that just because your mother-in-law doesn't have a thrush doesn't mean that everyone else does? I'm sorry that the signal seems to be bad. After that phone call, I packed up my things and went back to my parents' house. By that time, I was about to enter the second half of my pregnancy. And when I told my husband that I wanted to go home early, isn't that sweet, I ignored it. Even while I was on my way home, my mother-in-law and husband frequently contacted me. When I realized I wasn't answering the phone very often, he started sending me messages. I let you go home early, so please come back here as soon as the baby is born. That child is our precious heir. My Keiko told me that. My room is not tidy. I'm too busy to clean it. So when you come back, please start by cleaning it. Your body will feel better after giving birth, right? He said jokingly on the phone. I thought it was bad for my stomach when I got irritated, so I ignored everything. From my grandmother, seriously, Lily, even after the baby is born, I won't help you with anything. From my appearance, my grandmother was very displeased, probably because she realized that I was not getting along with my in-laws. Lily, come here for a second. If there's one good thing, it would be that I had more opportunities to talk to my mother. I talked about what my mother-in-law and husband told me and what I had been told. Actually, things haven't been going well with Keiko and his mother-in-law for a long time. Even though I am pregnant, Keiko still will not do the housework. The real reason why I came back here early is because Keiko has been in a hurry lately. I've become more and more irritated. I'm scared. A little while ago, Keiko became more and more irritated. In his worst moments, he would yell at me for being pregnant and shove me on the shoulder. When I consulted my mother-in-law, she only told me to be patient. At that time, I had a bruise, and I have a medical certificate. Now that I am struck, I am thinking of getting a divorce after the baby is born. After my mother was silent for a while with a stern face, "Yes, I understand," I replied with just one word. After some time, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When labor pains began, I contacted my husband, but maybe he didn't like my attitude of ignoring his earlier contact. I can't go because I'm busy with work. Just tell me when you're discharged from the hospital. Even though my child was about to be born, I felt dizzy given my crazy husband's attitude. I became angry given his attitude, so when I told him the day I was discharged from the hospital, I didn't contact him after that, and my husband didn't contact me either. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, my mobile phone rang when I was slowly returning to my parents' house. The other party was Keiko. When I hesitated to answer the phone because I didn't want to talk, my mother, who was next to me, silently reached out to my mobile phone and put my husband on speakerphone. "Hey, you're discharged from the hospital today, aren't you? Why haven't you come home? Mom and I have been waiting for you since this morning. Come home early and show your grandchild to my mom." My husband screamed, echoed through my room. I was silent. "My daughter and grandson are dead. Forget it, and I will never forgive you." What my mother said was outrageous. Huh? That voice? Is that your... She died? Huh? My husband seemed terribly upset. Then I heard someone nearby to Keiko. "Lily's mother, this is Keiko's mother. Could it be that you're lying? This is where you get in trouble, right?" My body trembled just by hearing that nasal voice. My body was filled with disgust for my mother-in-law and husband. My mother stopped me when I tried to retort. "Good. Shall we get out? I think you're the one who's really in trouble, though. Let's go to the police to raise your hand with enough force to get a bruise." Saying so, my mother hung up the phone. The mother? When I was confused, my mother hugged me tightly as I held my son, saying that I was fine. It was my first time being hugged by my mother, and I was happy that she was on my side. When I was watching my son sleeping peacefully with my mother for a while, my grandmother, who was out, came back with noisy footsteps. "What the hell? You're still alive? I just got a call from Keiko's mother. You guys hurt me in doing this too. I'm going to apologize now." My grandmother, who didn't even care about her grandchild, half forced us to take her to the in-laws' house. When I arrived at my mother-in-law's house, my mother-in-law and husband glared at me and my mother. "Oh, that child is our cute heir. Come on." As my mother-in-law approached me, "Don't touch me." My voice came out involuntary. Did those words touch the scales? "Hey, you should apologize. I only touched your shoulder, and the police are exaggerating." My husband yelled at me. I glared at my husband. "I can't divorce you anymore. You won't come to see my newborn child. Even though you're going to be a father, nothing will change for you. I can't imagine a happy future with you anymore." Raising his voice, my husband got scared because he was surprised by the word divorce from me. Yes, if you don't mind, but leave your grandchild behind and go out alone. Lily, aren't you suffering from postpartum depression? Besides, there's a crazy mother nearby who would even joke that she died. If so, my grandchild would not grow up properly." My mother-in-law told me that with a snort. "Your grandmother should take my side and apologize to me and my mother as soon as possible," Keiko kept saying. Then my mother, who was silent, "Which one is crazy? My precious daughter and grandchild are not your toys." Saying that, my mother glared at my grandmother. It was at that time. "What happened earlier? There's a lot of noise. I can hear people yelling all the way from the building. Oh, did Lily and the others come?" The grandmother-in-law smiled at her son. "So, what is the situation here? Can you explain?" Keiko's grandmother glared at her daughter with cold eyes. "No, mother-in-law's wrong." Our words seemed to resonate. Keiko's grandmother, my grandmother-in-law, seemed to have heard the general story. Are you doing such a shameful thing as picking on your wife in this era of Rawa? At the words of my grandmother-in-law, the faces of my husband and mother-in-law turned pale at once. To think you are completely obsessed with the management of the company, and you are not able to grasp the actions of your wife. And Keiko, your son still has a long way to go. My grandmother-in-law smiled at that. Lily, I'll make sure you take responsibility. I'm sorry I didn't notice you. You're going to break up with Keiko, but I'd be happy if you could come see me again. Of course, thank you for your help. Thank you. Then the grandmother-in-law looked at the awkward grandmother. You insisted, so I arranged a matchmaking between our grandchildren. Lily and her mother were very nice people, but what about you? As if to see something unpleasant, my grandmother was red to her ears. Looking at my husband and mother-in-law, who were in a dazed state, I bowed deeply to my grandmother-in-law and left the mother-in-law's house. Looking at me and my mother when we got home and packed our things. Hey, where are you going? I won't let you do what you want, in the words of my grandmother. Yes? Your mother-in-law said that she won't allow you to divorce her son until you, Lily, have had a child. I've already put up with it. I later heard from my mother that my father had another woman somewhere else, and my grandmother told my mother that she was to blame. When he asked for a divorce, he told her that he would not allow my mother to take me while I was still young. I also found out that my grandmother did not take care of my grandfather at all, which was so sad. Mom, you were an idiot. I should have run away with Lily. If I had done that, Lily wouldn't have to suffer and would have been happy. My mother's words made me burst into tears. After that, my mother and I both got divorced. My father didn't want to pay alimony and asked for a divorce, but there was multiple pieces of evidence that indicated a long-standing affair, and when my mother said she would consult a lawyer, he reluctantly accepted the divorce. I was shocked to learn that my father was such a piece of crap. I have no intention of seeing him again. My mother also requested compensation for mental distress from my grandmother. When I asked for a lawyer, I heard that Keiko was scared and simply paid. It seems that rumors have already spread about this matter, and it seems that my grandmother has quit the tea ceremony class and is now mostly staying at home. In addition, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law were kicked out of the former family. It seems that I had misunderstood, and it was only after my divorce that I learned that the former president of the company that Keiko's father works for was actually Keiko's grandmother. She's the chairman now. It seems that Keiko and the others were embezzling the company's money, and that the report came to the chairman, Keiko's grandmother. Choose here and now. Choose a company, this stupid wife, or stupid grandson. Hearing his mother's words, Lily's ex-husband chose the company without hesitation. The two cried and clung to each other, but of course there was no way they would be forgiven. The two are accused of a crime, but I heard that they are missing because they seem to have run away quickly. After the divorce was finalized, things were really good. Since then, my mom and I have rented a room and started living together with my son. I named my son Ayumyu. My mother began doing much better on her own. She was happier. Colleagues told me that my smile increased even at my part-time job. Ayumyu, it's a hat that grandmother knitted. When I started living with my mother, I learned a lot about her. That she's good at crafts, what she likes, what she doesn't like, what colors she likes. I didn't even know about my mother. Mom, thank you for everything. At my words, my mother suddenly smiled, a little embarrassed. From now on, I strongly vowed to walk the future with my precious family.